We are through the bye weekend of the AFL. It is now time to gear up for the big final series. It has been one hell of an AFL season on this Tuesday. I'm joined by Nick Riewoldt, who's got a little 3-day public holiday over there in the States. G'day, Roo. It's an exciting time of year for these boys that are playing finals.
Yeah, how good, Joey. And coming off a weekend where you just get the opportunity to freshen up. Looks like most of the teams are going to be pretty healthy going into it. So I think the opportunity for the whole industry to just take a breath, almost put that full stop, that exclamation mark on the home and away season, and then reload for the real stuff to begin now. That's ultimately what it boils down to for all of these teams. And, you know, for some of them, more than others, there is a lot at stake given what has happened with them over the last few years.
Yeah, spot on. And that's where I go with my thought of the week. We talk about the teams and everyone playing in the finals, but I want to go to the coaches because I think this is a pretty significant month for a number of coaches in this competition, Rooey, because there are some that have some monkeys on the back that they need to try and shake off. And there's no doubt Ken Hinkley is the big one. I mean, 12 years now, he's been coach, he's got them to prelims, but they've never made a grand final. And I don't think he's ever going to get a better look at making a grand final with this group, with the situation they're in, home final against the Cats. I think they are in the box seat. That's one. The second one is no doubt Chris Fagan, I think, as well. This is their 6th year in a row now where they have had a genuine crack at trying to win a premiership. I know they got close last year. As we know, though, Rooey, getting close doesn't count for much. They need to find a way to try and win this flag that they deserve, I think, as a group, but they're going to have to do it the hard way. And there's also pressure, surprisingly, I think, on John Longmire because you've got to remember, as great a coach as he is, he's lost his last 3 grand finals and by a total of 166 points in those 3 grand finals. If they make it again, there is going to be a bit of that monkey that you wouldn't want to lose 4 grand finals in a row as a senior coach. So some of these great coaches have got a big month ahead of them to either enhance their legacies or continue to have a bit of a monkey on the back. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I think there's going to be plenty of talking points to come out of the games, but the coaches is something that I want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, well, mine's a very similar vein, Joey, and one man whose legacy is assured and is established as far as coaching credentials go. That's Chris Scott. I mean, I think we can safely declare him the coach of the century. Since the turn of the century, I think he's absolutely the man now that takes that title. I know Lee Matthews had the 3 flags with the Lions, 4 grand finals, and Alistair Clarkson with 4 flags, Damien Hardwick with 3 flags. Chris Scott's got the 2, but I just think with what he's been able to achieve now, 14 years at the helm of Geelong, 12 final series out of 14 years, 8 prelims coming into this final series. You speak about coaches under pressure. It almost feels to me like Chris Scott, with what he's been able to do in a year with Geelong, where I think a lot of us expected to see the Cats slide this year, it's almost like they're playing with house money. They go over to Port Adelaide, where all of the pressure is on Port. Port have got all the young superstars. Geelong have got the aging veterans that are trying to hang on to a dynasty that they just seem determined not to let go because they keep defying the trend of what the rest of the competition goes through. So, I love Chris Scott. I think he's amazing what he's been able to do with that group down there. And, while a lot of coaches are under pressure, this man just seems to eat it for breakfast. He's got them there again, and they go over with a free swing against an under pressure Port Adelaide team.
Yeah, it's a great call, Rui. And I think too, some of these coaches in the opposition coaches box to Chris Scott will be nervous because Chris is a genius at figuring out ways to try and sort of disarm the opposition and find an advantage within his team. And with the extra week off, it's a bit like the old Bill Belichick. I think Bill Belichick never got beaten when he had the bye because he had an extra week to prepare at the Super NFL coach. You feel like Chris Scott might be preparing something similar. So looking forward to this final series. I want to ask you about Port Adelaide. Well, what's your take on the Port Adelaide situation with Ken Hinkley? Because they have lost their last 3 finals. We know they went out in straight sets last year. He's never made the grand final. What happens if Port Adelaide, for me, I'll call it a fail if they don't make a grand final this year from where they're sitting? Is it just, bad luck, butter up, go again? That's all you can do?
Well, I think, that's all you can do. I think absolutely they'd consider it a failure. But if you look at the man we were just talking about, Chris Scott, the more you put yourself in the position to be there at this time of year, that's the only way to do it. That's the only way you get a chance. And for the 8 prelims that Geelong have found themselves in under Chris Scott's time, in 14 years, there's 2 flags. So they're bloody hard to win. I mean, we know how hard they are to win. I wish they gave them away, but they don't. But look, I think Ken Hinkley, if he's not the man that gets it done this year, I think he's still the man that gets them in position. I don't hold it against him necessarily that they haven't been able to take that next step, because I think one of the really challenging parts of our game is the way it's now designed is the cyclical nature of making teams come back to the pack, and he's been able to defy that trend with his group, and now he has a young core that I think can carry them for another 5 years. So I hope it's this year. I think he's a great football person. I'd love to see them there on grand final day, but if it's not to be, well then you got no choice. You just got to butter up and go again.
Yeah, spot on. I agree. It's a good call. They just got to keep fronting up, keep giving yourself a chance. And it is interesting, actually, when you do look at the ladder. The teams that are the top 4, top 5 have been playing finals for a long time. Like the Giants had a little dip year before Adam Kingsley came along, but they were playing finals, through only 5 years ago and have played the last couple. We know about Brisbane. Port Adelaide have been thereabouts. You mentioned the Cats and Sydney, again, besides a little 2-year dip, have been there. So these teams just keep fronting up and are really the benchmark for these other sides to try and catch. What about a team that are going to have to do it from a long way out, and that's the Blues? They've obviously stumbled the back end of the year. They've only won 3 of their last 9 games, those 3 wins against Richmond, West Coast and North Melbourne. They are going to get a host of stars back. First of all, does that concern you? And secondly, does it sort of bring back memories of Stevie Baker? Remember when he missed, 12 weeks straight or something like that, or leading up, and then Ross Lyon picked him for a grand final off a big long break? There's little shades of that to this one.
There are a few people that I've ever come across that could emulate what Bates did from that point of view, from a physical perspective, because that man would, he would jump on a grenade for you. He is that sort of player. But also from a psychological point of view, he's one of the physically and mentally toughest blokes I've ever come across. Look, I think Carlton are up against it. They're in horrible form when you sort of extrapolate out over a period of a couple of months, like you said, and the injuries to star players. I mean, you sit in the hotel room the night before the game in Brisbane, and then the morning of the game, you want to be feeling good about yourself, not thinking, gee, I hope I'm able to work my way into the game. You want to go into those games as an individual, chock full of confidence. And I'm not sure a lot of the players for Carlton are going to be able to do that because of either the form that they've been in or the fact that they haven't been playing due to injury. So look, it's a really big mountain to climb. They don't have to look too far for inspiration in terms of finals performance with their coach Michael Voss. I know he's not a terribly self-indulgent man. He's a very humble man, Bossy, but I wonder if he just doesn't, dip into the bag of tricks. The Lee Matthews type sort of psychology that if it bleeds, you can kill it. Any of that sort of stuff that have got Brisbane over the line sort of back in the early 2000s. But yeah, it's a tough ask.
Imagine if the coach put on his own highlights of his finals and just did a hype video around himself. I reckon that'd be awesome as a player to watch Vossi at his absolute peak in finals. Hey, I just quickly
show the Vossi and Scotty Burns highlight.
Show
all
that
one.
That's right.
That's one of Scotty Burns is as tough as they come, but that is an all-time moment.
So we'll put this in the time capsule as we do this on the Tuesday. I think, Curnow will play, Harry Mackay will play, Mitch McGovern will play, and Zach Williams will play. I don't think they'll pick Chera. I don't think they'll pick Jack Martin. The other question, the big one for no one to ask you, would you pick Sam Doherty as the sub? There is a lot of talk that he's flying at training. They think he's done enough work. Can that, for a team that, as you just said, probably, long odds to win this game against Brisbane at the Gabba, is this just a little 1 or 2% to pick Doc? You make him the sub so you still get the arousal levels, and then you hope that you only need to bring him on for a quarter and a half. And with his poise and his experience, he could make a difference in an elimination final. Would you take the punt?
Well, the sub's the X factor, isn't it? I wouldn't be picking him to bank on him playing a full game of footy. But then you run the risk, don't you? If someone goes down early, like Curnow or any of those boys that have come in under a cloud, it's a big gamble to take. So, look, I think ultimately as a coach, you'd be handing it back to the medicos and saying, look, is he right? Is he not? And if he's not right to play a full game of footy and you go in with absolute confidence,
what if they've ticked him off? What if the medical staff have ticked him off, said from a playing he can play? It's now up to the coaches to decide whether you pick him or not.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I would. I'd be reluctant in this situation. I would. I love the romance of it. I like the, I like the potential morale boost that it gives the boys, but it's a risky one.
I tell you what, I've just thought of right then too, which is a factor, is it's at the Gabba where he did his ACL at the start of the year, and there's been a number of ACLs early on the year at the Gabba. I don't know whether that's just a bit of a coincidence or whether there's something with the ground, but that is just a little one. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that as it plays out. Hey, the other one was at Hawkins and Guthrie for the Cats. We'll definitely play VFL this weekend. Question for you, if you were coming back from an injury and you weren't quite right, would you, towards the end of your career, play VFL footy to have a chance at trying to be picked for an AFL Grand Final? Like the Hawk?
No, of course you would.
Oh, I don't know if you would.
Yeah,
would you?
What? So what's the alternative? You say, nah, sorry, boys, I'm done.
Don't keep training.
Don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. No, of course. Like, I think you get to this stage of the year and this stage of your career. I mean, what have you got to lose? You might as well, put it all out there. And who knows? I mean, how many times there are stories of guys that have played a handful of games in their career, and one of the games that they managed to play was coming in as a replacement for a grand final, and they've got a premiership medal. I mean, what a way for Tom Hawkins to go out that would be to come in, replacing an injured player, and he goes out playing in another granny. So.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Some other injury news. Jack Payne got through a VFL game for Brisbane. I think they will bring him into the side. I think he might replace Dara Joyce to try and take on the big key forwards for the Blues. Will Day has been ruled out for the Hawks, which is a blow. He's a young star, but they are in good form. And the Western Bulldogs, Jason Johannesson and Riley West played some VFL, or they are available as well. So it's good. That's the advantage of the buys. It means that every team can really start to ramp up their injury list and get everyone right, fit and going. Last one before we take a little break, Roo, the All-Australian recap. What did you make of, first of all, the team, and then a bit of the chat around, in particular, Harris Andrews, Zach Merritt, and Massimo D'Ambrosio? You got any thoughts?
I mean, it's the same as every year. And I know I sat on the committee there for a couple of years, and it's a really tough process. But every year we do this. I mean, every year there's potentially a couple of guys that people perceive are lucky to have made it. And a couple that are really stiff to miss out. The one that I did, I love seeing Jacob Wiedering make it this year, because he's been right there a number of times. Once, I think maybe both times I was on the panel, he was, he might have been the next man in, and there was fierce debate around him. So yeah, he was one in particular that I was rapt to see get inside.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a pretty good scene. For what it's worth, I definitely would have had Harris Andrews in, probably at the expense of a Nick Blakey or Lukey Ryan. I thought that Harris, he'd been a massive reason for the turnaround in the Brisbane Lions season. Zach Merritt, yes, was stiff, but we know there's always a mid or two stiff. And I agreed with the All-Australian selectors about just having the one wingman. I know there's a lot of talk, but unless there's two standouts, I think you need to put a midfielder on the outside. Massimo D'Ambrosio had an excellent season, but wasn't at the All-Australian level of some of these other midfielders that deserve to be All-Australians. And speaking of deserving, Max Gorney, 7th All-Australian Blazer, and Bontempelli, first time as captain with his 6th Blazer. But I know Bontempelli will be looking to add to the trophy cabinet with either a Brownlow, a Norm Smith, or a premiership medal. But we will take a break, Rooey. We do want to get into some real talk, shit talk. If you do have a question for us, get on Instagram at footytalk_pod or on TikTok at footytalkpod. We'll be back right after this. You are listening to Footy Talk. If you are listening on Spotify, please hit the bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. It is Tuesday. We're here with Nick Riewoldt. We will play Real Talk, Shit Talk. We'll do an abbreviated version, Roo, but I want a bit of an in-depth chat, because the first Real Talk, Shit Talk question is around Christian Petracca, the saga that feels like it has come to some sort of end. But I'll make this statement. All is now well again at Melbourne, because Christian Petracca has recommitted. Real talk or shit talk?
No, that's shit talk, Joey. He might have recommitted, but I would hardly have called it convincing. I think when there's that level of scrutiny around something and you're a leader of the football club, I think more than a written statement being released was necessary. I'd love to have heard from Christian and still some of the wording around it, I remain committed to the Melbourne Football Club. I mean, well, you can't remain committed when you weren't committed. So, that was a little bit funny to me. And also, I mean, I think he kept the door well and truly ajar for next year or the year after or the year after that. So, yeah, look, I think that's going to be a watch this space. He's a great player, so I still think he'll be able to go out and perform next year for the D's. But to me, it looked like the obvious had dawned on him, and that was a trade was going to be impossible. I mean, the amount of draft capital that someone was going to have to give up, the teams that he was going to want to go to weren't going to be able to afford him. And so in the end, I think it was the only thing that the only decision that he could make.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I mean, what's really affected him has been the decision from the AFL not to extend the future picks trading to an extra year, because if that came in, then there probably was a much more likelihood that Petracca would find a new home. And that has been left ajar that will come in 12 months' time. So I agree with you. I think that there will still be speculation for the next 12 months. There'll be a lot of talk around Melbourne's form, Christian Petracca's form. Everyone next year will be trying to find any chinks in the armour of the Melbourne leadership group and connections between Christian and the coaching staff. So I think this will continue on. I think this will be a big talking point throughout next year, and even the talk around, maybe this has forced Melbourne to do the necessary change to their culture. Well, I don't know if that's what Christian ideally wanted. I think Christian's priority was to get out and go to another club. So it's going to be interesting to see. But, yeah, there's still plenty to play out for me in this space, and I'm not sure it's going to end as well as they would hope. I know there's some positivity. Gary Lyon last night on the couch was saying this could be great for Melbourne, and there is a chance that it all might just gel and everyone airs their dirty laundry and off they go and have another crack at a flag. But there's also a view that this could just be little fractures that make it really difficult for them going into the future. Hey, another one I want to ask you, real talk, shit talk. Essendon, a lot of talk about Jake Stringer at the moment. He's triggered a 1-year contract. He wants to go longer. They're not going to extend him. If they don't extend him to 2 years, they risk losing Jake Stringer. Are you worried about that?
I wouldn't be extending him. No way. I mean, I think he's proven in a negative sense over a long period of time that he's not necessarily a player that can be trusted to do the right thing as far as professionalism goes. And so, yeah, I'd keep him on another 1-year deal. And if he earns the right at over 30 years of age, how old's Jake?
Yeah, he'd be 30. Yep, 30, 31.
Yeah, so I think you keep him on another 1-year deal, and if he earns the right to get an extension post that, well then so be it. But I'd keep him hungry and incentivise him that way for a player that hasn't always had the best track record as far as the way he's presented himself.
Yeah, if that's the case, then I think they'll lose him. Because if I'm another club, I'd be trying to wrench Jake Stringer out of Essendon, and I'd be offering him, if I was a team in contention, a team like Collingwood who need another forward, a team like Melbourne who need another forward, maybe the Sydney Swans, maybe Geelong, sides that want to stay competitive and stay at the top, I'd be giving him 2 years, and there'd even be a trigger potentially for a third, depending if he hits some markers, because I think players like him are hard to find. I know people are hard on him. I know he can be inconsistent, but these match winners generally are. He still kicked over 40 goals this year and didn't even, hit the heights of some previous years. So I think then Essendon have got to be prepared to lose Jake Stringer, and that might be part of their plan. They are trying to maybe make some hard calls, and maybe it works in their favour. But I think then if that's the case, I could see him in other colours. Hey, that's all we have time for, Rooey. It's going to be a massive week. I'm looking forward to it. I look forward to chatting to you as well next week. But remember, tomorrow, Abby Holmes will be on with Jack Heverin. Until then, enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks for watching Footy Talk with myself and Rooey. New podcast episodes dropping every Tuesday, so make sure you tune in.